His mother was not very happy. She was very upset.
Jinnah was determined to leave his provincial background. He obeyed his mother's wishes and married a girl from the same Khoja community. A few days after the wedding, barely 16 years old, he sailed alone for London. "I will return a great man from England," he wrote to his cousin. "And not only you, but the whole country would be proud of me. Would you not be happy then?" Jinnah soon forsook his business apprenticeship for law. He enrolled for the bar at Lincoln's Inn and studied in the reading room of the British Museum. At first, life in London was a shock for the boy from Karachi, as he later recalled. "I found a strange country and unfamiliar surroundings. I did not know a soul, and the winter and the fogs upset me a great deal. But I soon settled down and was quite happy." In the visitors' gallery of the House of Commons, Jinnah awoke to politics. There he heard the main speech of the first Indian MP, Dadapai Naoroji. If Naoroji's nationalism gave Jinnah an ideal, it was the principles of Parliament which supplied him his method.
He used to go and visit British Parliament, and he imbibed that spirit. You see his speeches in the Assembly. They were on the same pattern. He has publicly said that when you speak English, you must speak as far as possible like an Englishman.
He was very British in his own character. That is the funny part, you see. He was so British, it's just not true. The way he behaved, the way he lived, the way he ate, the way he stood, everything that he did was very, very British.
While Jinnah was in London putting the finishing touches to his new persona, the family business was foundering. But Jinnah, set on qualifying as a barrister, ignored his father's calls home.
And he said no. He didn't want to go back. He wanted to finish everything, finish his education and so on. And he did.
When Jinnah did return, it was not to Karachi. While he'd been away from India, his child bride had died, as had his mother. Bombay was to be his base for 50 years. At first, life was far from easy. Jinnah moved into the railway hotel, enrolled at the High Court, and waited for clients.
And then he said, when I started, I didn't have enough money even to travel by tram or bus. Most of the time I would walk. And then he said, there is always room at the top, but there is no lift. You have to struggle. And struggle very hard. And then he mentioned about himself.
Do you know, 2 or 3 years before I became a magistrate, I had a very bad time. And I used to go every other night, or almost every night, to the Watson's Hotel billiard room. It was a famous hotel in those days, and I used to take on people at billiards for a wager. And that is how I supplemented my otherwise meager resources. Watson's Hotel is now a crumbling warren of offices and apartments. The solitary reminder of its former identity is this initial W. Jinnah's luck turned when he was made a temporary magistrate. This was to boost his status and his earnings, when after 6 months he returned from the bench to the bar.
He was so clear, so convincing. Most complicated case, he says, he would break up in such a way and present it in a masterly fashion that he would be able to persuade the judges. But he could thrill the juries.
The newborn state was also in delicate health. Almost immediately, relations with India were poisoned by the conflict over Kashmir. At partition, the state's Hindu Maharaja had wanted to accede to India, but conscious of the pro-Pakistan wishes of his overwhelmingly Muslim people, he refused to commit himself. A self-governing Azad Kashmir was declared when Muslims in the west of the state took matters into their own hands. In October 1947, 5,000 armed Pakistani tribesmen entered Kashmir to defend them from attacks by state troops. 2 days later, the Maharaja declared for India and called for its military support. Jinnah flew to Lahore to discuss the crisis with Mountbatten.
Mountbatten's attitude to the Kashmir crisis was that it was a terrifying development, that having achieved a settlement which had the great advantage of allowing both countries to enjoy status in the British Commonwealth, it would be a terrible thing if two Commonwealth countries were at war with each other within 3 months of their own power.
Jinnah was dissuaded from military intervention when the British threatened to withdraw all officers serving in the fledgling Pakistan army. He remained in Lahore, depressed and ill. A few months later, his health worsening from the lung cancer which was to kill him, he withdrew to the cool mountain retreat of Ziyarat in Balochistan.
I have a feeling that his body clock had told him that he was dying. But he wanted to prolong it as much as he could, to see Pakistan firmly on its feet. And I have no doubt those 4 months in Quetta and Ziyarat did prolong his life. I think he was much more relaxed. He wasn't burdened with affairs of the state to the same degree as he was in Karachi. And he knew that he must recoup so as to give some more time of his life to the state that he had founded.
We were informed that Jinnah was very poorly, and I and also Bob Harrison, who was a pilot, approached the naval aide-de-camp and said, please, if you possibly can, arrange for Jinnah to get aboard the aircraft as soon as possible, because it's going to be very bumpy indeed later in the day.
We drove down in the ambulance to the airstrip of our airport, and we took him out. And as we were carrying the stretcher, I remember Mazhar was on one side and I was on the other. A gust of wind came and blew this white sheet on his face. He moved the sheet away. As he neared the doorway of the plane, the crew had lined up. They gave a salute and he returned it with his hand. So he was he had all his faculties intact.
He was helped aboard, and directly he arrived at the saloon, they converted 2 of the easy armchairs to a bed, and he then rested in that bed. We took off at 2:10 in the afternoon, which is one of the worst times for turbulence. Flying over terrain which was rugged, up to 5,000 feet, and we had all the heat of the day causing turbulence. So I went to the door leading into the slough, and as it so happened, I was looking directly at Jinnah as he was propped up on his pillows. And he could obviously see the concern on my face, because he gave me the most wonderful smile, a smile I shall never forget. And it was a smile that said, "Don't be concerned, all is well, and all will be well."
We got there 6:30. We put him in a little room on the ground floor. You know, there there was so much happening. People were coming in and going out, and I think the doctor came in. One of these two, either Dr. Haipanch or Dr. Mistry. They just threw their stethoscopes on the sofa and slumped back. So I sensed it, and I got up, walked out, and I went in and saw his, they covered his face. And Miss Jinnah was weeping, sitting beside him.
While Jinnah repeated his stress that Pakistan should be based on Islamic principles, in a speech to the new Constituent Assembly, he indicated what sort of state he really wanted to create. Tolerant in his interpretation of Islam, he seemed also to reveal his own liberalism, as well as his lifelong concern for the rights of all. You may belong to any religion or caste or creed. That has nothing to do with the business of the state. You will find that in course of time, Hindus would cease to be Hindus and Muslims would cease to be Muslims. Not in the religious sense, because that is the personal faith of each individual, but in the political sense, as citizens of the state.